is if you picked up a kit from us at the museum, then you have a little worksheet in your kit that looks like, getting mine, that looks like this. Everybody, if you have a kit, if you picked up a kit from us, you have this worksheet. If you did not pick up a kit from us and you are supplying your own supplies, then I have sent this to your parent or to the email that you registered with in the email. So your parent may have been able to print this off for you. If not, then I'm going to show you how to recreate this. So I don't want you to worry at all about that. I am really quickly going to close our shade in my shade in my office so the light doesn't start getting weird, and then we're ready to roll. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. The light starts to come in at this time of day in a weird way that makes it hard for you to see me. Okay. So the other thing I want to say before we get started is we have a couple of ground rules for Afternoon Art Club, and those rules are that I would like for you, please, 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 to be respectful and kind. Those are the only two things that we're going to ask you to do in Art Club. We want your creative ideas to flow, but we also want to make sure that when it's time for you to maybe show your artwork to your friends in Afternoon Art Club or to our peers, that we're being supportive and kind about the work that we're seeing. And so we're going to continue to ask you throughout the entire session of Afternoon Art Club to please be respectful and to be kind. And I know we won't have any issues with that, but I always like to just point that out before we get started. So, just to kind of test to make sure everybody's with us, if you will say hi to me in the chat box, you can just type hi. Oops, I just typed it incorrectly. I'm gonna chat. I had mine set the wrong way. I'm gonna type it to everyone. Hi. So say hello to me. That helps me know that you're here, and it also helps me know that you know how to use the chat box. Awesome, I'm seeing lots of highs coming in. Perfect. Okay, so that's great to see. Everybody found the chat and everybody is with me. All right, guys, so today we're going to be talking about perspective drawing. Now, you may know that term or you may not know that term. Perspective drawing is one of my favorite types of drawing, and I'm excited to talk about that with you today. If you have ever done perspective drawing, why don't you tell me that in the chat box? If you've ever done perspective drawing before, just say, I've done it before, so that I kind of know who's done it or who hasn't done it. So if you've done perspective drawing before, I see some no's, I see some I haves, so good. So we have some people that are familiar, some people that are not familiar. Today, I'm going to introduce you to perspective. So if you've done it before, this might be a little bit of a review, but if you've never done it before, you are going to learn all about it today, so no worries. The first thing I'm going to do is share my screen with you, and I'm going to share a little PowerPoint about perspective. This will help you understand exactly what perspective drawing is, and it will help me and you make sure that we know exactly what we're looking at. So I'm going to make sure that I've got my chat box open here. Remember that if you have any questions at all, please just throw those in the chat box. And here we go. All right. So what is perspective or linear perspective? Linear perspective is just sort of a big term for perspective drawing. Perspective drawing or linear perspective is a way of creating the illusion of depth on a flat surface. So it makes it look like you're looking at something that's three-dimensional or going back into space, even though it's on a flat piece of paper. Now, with linear perspective, there are two big vocabulary words you're going to need to know and remember. The first one is vanishing point, and the second one is horizon line. So the horizon line on your perspective drawings is going to be a horizontal line where the sky meets the land. So if you're looking at a landscape drawing, for example, and you see the sky at the top and the ground at the bottom, the line where the sky and the ground meet is called the horizon line. So that's what the horizon line is. Now, the vanishing point in a perspective drawing is the point on the horizon line. The vanishing point is always on the horizon line. That's important to remember, where the things that are going back into space all seem to meet at the vanishing point. Now, you could imagine if you were standing at the end of your street and looking down a very long street, it might look like as the street gets farther and farther away from you that it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until the street almost disappears. And the point at which that street disappears is the vanishing point. So that's what we're going to be looking at and talking about today. Now, I want to tell you, with 1 point perspective, there's a lot of different types of perspective drawing, and we're going to be doing 1 point perspective drawing. In 1 point perspective, there is one vanishing point, and it is on the horizon line. That's why we call it 1 point perspective, because there's only one vanishing point. All lines that are going back into space will meet at the one vanishing point. So I'm going to show you some examples from the Florence County Museum's collection of artwork that show you 1 point perspective. So let's look at a few examples here. This is a painting by one of my very favorite artists. His name is William Henry Johnson. He's an African-American artist that was born right here in Florence, South Carolina in 1901. If he were still alive today, he would be almost 120 years old. Not quite, but almost 120 years old. Now, this painting uses 1 point perspective. Now, even though we've got a lot of wavy lines in this painting, if you take a look, and you can just watch the cursor, my cursor of my mouse on this painting, if we take a look, the street kind of starts closest to us, and it's really wide closest to us. But as it gets farther away from us, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and it seems to disappear right around here. This would be the vanishing point. This is kind of where the ground stops. So this kind of would be the horizon line here. Let me show you that with some markings on top of the drawing or the painting. So here we go. This red line would be the horizon line right there. And these lines are all seeming to go back sort of at a diagonal and meet right at this point, which would be the vanishing point. So we can see William Henry Johnson used 1 point perspective in creating this painting called Cognos-sur-Mer. Let's look at another example. It's not just paintings that use 1 point perspective. This is an etching. Now, an etching is a type of printmaking. This particular etching was created by an artist named Alfred Huddy, and it also uses 1 point perspective. You can notice that the street closest to us is nice and wide, and it seems to go back almost at a diagonal until it gets farthest away from us and almost disappears. So let me show you that with some lines I've added. Here we go. You can see that red line would be our horizon line where the ground seems to stop. And those purple lines that you see are the lines leading to the vanishing point, which would be right where those arrows are pointing. That would be our vanishing point. All right, let's look at one more. This is another etching by an artist named Elizabeth ONeill Werner. Now, Elizabeth ONeill Werner also used perspective drawing. I like this one because we can kind of see the lines of the sidewalk also at a diagonal lining up to point to the vanishing point. So let me show you that with my lines. Here we go. That red line would be the horizon line. And those purple lines would be all the lines of the painting meeting at the vanishing point, which would be right here. Is that making sense? Hopefully everybody understands. If you have a question, remember, throw it in the chat box. I'm happy to answer questions as we go along. So if you're not sure or you have a question, please drop it in the chat box. I'd love to hear it. So I've shown you some examples of one-point perspective being used in a painting and in etchings. Now I want us to practice some one-point perspective together. Now I'm going to give you a couple of options here. You can follow along with me. You can just watch what I do and you can do this on your own, or you can draw right along with me, whatever works best for you. But I do want you to make sure that you can clearly see what I'm showing you how to do before we get started. So we're going to do some practice, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to stop sharing this screen. Everybody should be able to see my face again. Hopefully you can. And now I'm going to share a different screen with you that shows my desktop so that you can see the drawing on my desktop. So let me switch to that really quickly. Just hang with me here. Remember, if you have questions, please put those questions in the chat box. And I'm going to share my screen. Just stay with me. All right. Hopefully everybody can see what looks like my hand on the table. Give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Everybody, can you see it? Okay, I see some thumbs up. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to bring my chat box to the front so that if you have any questions, I'm paying close attention to those. And I'm going to move my camera just a little to make sure that you can see really clearly what I'm doing. Flatten everything out here. Give me just a moment. I'm getting a crazy wheel here. Hold on a second. Ah! I don't want to buy anything. One moment. Let me flip this around and see if it'll, there we go. All right, let's try that again. Here we go. I'm going to make sure that we are focused here. Let me get my screen ready. Switching between cameras can be a little bit tricky. This is the paper that we're going to be using, that I'm going to be using for practice with you. So if you have that paper and you want to draw along with us, go ahead and grab it. And if you don't have it, or you want to do this on your own later, that's also perfectly fine. I'm going to lock our focus here so that we, no, there we go, so that it's not difficult for you to see. Okay, now everybody should be with me. I hope that everyone is still with me here. Let me see. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay, now if you're following along, here's what you're going to need. You're going to need a ruler and a pencil and your sheet of paper. Now, if you did not pick up a kit from us and you do not have this sheet of paper, let me tell you what you can do to make your own version of this. All you have to do, and this is for people who may not have this sheet. So if you have this sheet, just hang tight a second. Anybody who does not have this sheet, you can make your own really easily by just using a ruler to make a horizontal line on your paper, just like that. You can label it horizon line if you want, just to help you remember that term. And then you're just going to put a dot somewhere on that horizon line, and you can label that vanishing point. All right, and then all you have to do, if you're going to be making this sheet on your own, is draw some shapes. So you might want to draw a square and a triangle and maybe a rectangle, but you can just draw some shapes. This is also good for those of you who do have the sheet that I gave you, this sheet. This is also just good practice. You can do this, you could draw any shape and practice drawing it in perspective. So if you don't have this sheet, just draw one for yourself really quickly. we're going to do 2 shapes together from this sheet, and then the other 2 I'm going to let you do on your own time as practice. So I'm going back to this sheet. If you're making your own sheet, make sure you have a horizon line and a vanishing point and at least 2 shapes. Let's just go with 2 shapes for now. You can add the other 2 later, but let's just do 2 shapes for now. One above the horizon line and one below the horizon line. Okay, so what we're going to do is turn these simple shapes into 3-dimensional forms. So we want these forms to look like they're 3-dimensional forms going back into space. And I'll show you what they will look like once we've done that. It kind of looks like this. This is what we'll get when we're finished. But let's go back to our sheet, and I want us to work together to do this square. The square I have in the bottom right-hand corner, and I want to use 1-point perspective to draw this square as a 3-dimensional form. So grab your ruler if you're drawing along with us. If not, you can always just watch and then do this on your own later. So you don't have to do this right now. You can just watch if you're more comfortable watching now. All right, so what we're going to do is you are going to find the bottom left point of your square right here. And I've got my pencil on that point, and I'm going to line my pencil up with my ruler and line up my ruler with both my pencil point and the vanishing point. Do you see how my ruler is lined up with both the bottom left-hand corner and my vanishing point? And I just want to draw a line along the edge of my ruler there, just like that. So I just drew a line from my vanishing point to the bottom edge of my ruler. So that's my first line. Now, I want to do that again with my top left-hand corner. I'm going to take that corner, I'm going to line it up with the vanishing point with my ruler. It kind of helps. A trick that I like to use is to put my pencil on that corner, and then the ruler just hits the tip of my pencil, and I know I'm in exactly the right spot. And then I can just sort of pivot the ruler to line up with the vanishing point. That's my trick. I'm going to make a line just like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the top right-hand corner. I'm going to put my pencil point down, line up my ruler, line my ruler up with the vanishing point, and draw a line. And now I have the beginning of my cube going back into space. Now, you might notice that a cube has 4 corners, right? This square has 4 corners. We didn't do anything with this corner down here. And the reason for that is because if this were a solid form, what this corner connects to, it would connect to the vanishing point as well. But we don't want to draw through the middle of our solid form like that. So our form is not see-through, it's solid. So we wouldn't actually see that line. So any line that goes through the middle of your shape, you don't draw that one. If it goes through the middle of your shape, you don't draw it, okay? All right, so now we're going to do 2 more lines just to kind of finish off this cube. Right now, this looks like a really, really, really long cube that goes back into space forever. And we don't want that. We just want a small cube. So I'm going to find the back edge of my cube, and it could be anywhere. I could make a really short, tall cube by making a vertical line right here, or I could make a longer rectangular cube by making a vertical line back here. I'm going to do mine kind of medium, sort of in the middle, and I'm just going to make a vertical line. So that's the back edge of my cube. You'll notice how I'm staying in between these 2 lines that I've drawn to the vanishing point. I'm not drawing this all the way down to the bottom of this line. I'm staying within the lines I drew to my vanishing point. And then this line, I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm just going to make a horizontal line from this corner, the corner of this line straight over. So I'm just staying horizontal. All right, and so now I have a cube that's going back into space. If I wanted to, I could erase these guidelines. I can keep them, or I can erase them. I'm just erasing them right now so you can see what that looks like. But now it looks like I have a three-dimensional cube going back into space. Everybody with me? It's not difficult. Sometimes you just have to stop and think about what you're doing. So if you're getting confused or you don't know what needs to line up with what, just stop and ask yourself. For example, if I came to this bottom corner and I thought, do I connect this to the vanishing point? I could just ask myself, well, if I draw a line, am I going to be drawing a line right through the middle of my cube? Yes, I am. So I don't want to draw that. And just erase it. One thing about drawing in one-point perspective is that you're going to be doing a lot of erasing. You're going to draw some lines and want to erase them, and then some lines you're going to want to darken in. So just get used to erasing. There's no shame in drawing a line and redrawing it to fix it. Just go back, erase, and redraw if it's not quite right. So now we've done our cube right on the bottom. If you have questions or you've had trouble, again, make sure you're using your chat box. Throw in your questions in your chat box if you have them. If you have a question that you want to voice, then at the end, once I stop the recording, I'll let you ask those questions. All right, so at the top right-hand corner, let's go on to our triangle at the top right-hand corner, okay? We're on our triangle at the top right-hand corner, and we're going to draw this triangle as if it's a pyramid going back into space. So I'm going to start with the corner closest to the vanishing point, because that's always the easiest one. So the one closest to the vanishing point is this one. Again, I'm going to put my pencil on that corner, line the ruler up with my pencil, and then with the vanishing point, and make a line, just like that. Do the same thing with the next one right here. Line my pencil up with the corner, and with my vanishing point, I'm going to make a line. And last but not least, my top corner, I'm going to line my pencil up with my vanishing point and make a line. Now you'll notice that we didn't leave out any corners on this because none of the corners would have taken us through the middle of our shape. So we know we're good to do all of them. Now, again, just like we did on this one, we're going to define what the back side of our triangle form is. We could make it a very long triangular form or a very short triangular form. I'm going to make mine a little bit long this time. So I'm going to start out by drawing a horizontal line because that angled line's a little tricky, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So I start out with my bottom, the bottom of my triangular form. But this angled line, that's a little tricky because we're not going to line that up with the vanishing point. That's not right. But it's also not a vertical line. So how do we find this angle? It's really easy. Let me show you how. You're going to take your ruler and line it up with the angle we already have, just like this. Line it up right on the angle that we already have. And I'm going to try and keep my ruler at that same angle. I'm going to slide it, but I'm not going to move it like this. I'm just going to gently slide it back, trying to keep it at that same angle until I get to the point where the bottom of my triangle, that horizontal line, is. And once I get there, I'm just going to trace a line up, just like that. So all I did was put my ruler on that line, on that angle, and I just carefully slid my ruler back, trying to keep it at the same angle. Just slid my ruler back and made that line, just like that. And again, I can erase these we call these guidelines. I can erase my guidelines if I would like to, or I can leave them. It's your practice sheet, so it doesn't have to, you can leave the guidelines or erase them. On this one, I left them. So I left my guidelines on this one, and I didn't leave them on this one. All right, so we've done 2 of these shapes. So the other 2, the rectangle and the star, which is maybe the most tricky one, and I'm gonna leave that for you to do. I want you to practice on these. Now, I don't want you to practice on them right now, because right now I want to show you something else. But I do want you to practice on these guys. So here we go. Hold on one second. I'm doing the wrong thing. I just shared something I wasn't trying to. Let me go back to this. Share. Hold on, I'm going to stop sharing and go back to my page. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Let me see here. One moment. Okay. That's what I want. Okay, got it. All right, guys. So now that we've got this, and I've got you in my chat box, so if you have any questions, remember, please just put them in the chat box. I'm here for that. Now I want to tell you what we're going to be doing, what our assignment for this time, for this month of October is going to be. So for the month of October, we are going to be working together, and we're going to spend the whole month working on this. We're going to be working together to do a 1-point perspective drawing of a streetscape. Now, a streetscape is kind of like a landscape. This is an example of one I started working on. But we're going to do a 1-point perspective streetscape together, and we're going to begin this together today. I'm going to show you guys how to start out. I'm going to show you exactly what you need. I'm going to give you some tips for how to draw your buildings, your road. I'm going to do all of these instructions for you right here. Now, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to start drawing, and I'm going to explain exactly what I'm doing, and I'm going to keep going. If you have questions about this, you can ask them in the chat box. But I do want to encourage you, starting tomorrow, this whole video is going to be available for you to watch as many times as you want to watch. So I'll send you a link to this video. You can watch it as many times as you want. So if you're confused about something that I do, you can watch me do it over and over if you need to, for you to be able to catch on to exactly what we're doing. So I'm going to try to go slow, and I'm going to try to explain very clearly how we're going to be drawing this. But if you are confused, just go back to the video and we'll watch it. You can watch it as many times as you need to. So that's just a hint. Now, the things you're going to need in order to begin this drawing are a sheet of paper. If you got a kit from us, you've got plenty of paper. If you got a kit from the museum, you actually have about 3 sheets of paper to use on this project. So you can practice, you can make a couple of versions. You can always use the front and the back of your paper if you're working and you're running out of paper. But you're going to need a sheet of paper, you're going to need a pencil, and you are going to need a ruler. So those are the only things that you need right now. You might need a pencil sharpener. If your pencil starts to get dull, it's nice to have nice sharp pencils when you're doing perspective drawing so that your lines are really sharp and clean on the ruler. And the other thing that might be handy if you have one is an extra eraser. I like to keep an eraser handy when I'm doing perspective drawing because I do a lot of erasing when I'm doing perspective drawing. So that is there, and that's what you will need for this project. So let's start out. We're going to start out by drawing a horizon line on our paper. So I'm going to draw a horizon line not exactly in the center of my paper. I'm going to draw it about 3 inches from the top of my paper. So I could measure if I wanted. This is just one way to do this. I could measure down 3 inches and put a dot, and then go over in another spot and measure down 3 inches and put a dot. And then I just connect those 2 dots using my ruler. I just connect those 2 dots with a line to create my horizon line. Now, I haven't drawn this very dark because I am going to be erasing parts of this line, and I don't want to draw so dark that I can still see my line when I erase. So, for example, on your practice sheet, these lines are really dark that I've drawn. If I draw a really dark line, it's difficult to erase that line. No matter how much I erase, you can still see it. So you want to make sure that your line isn't quite that dark. You want to be able to see it, but you also want to be able to erase it nice and cleanly. So I've drawn my horizon line. If you're working along with me, your horizon line should be down. And now I'm going to draw my vanishing point. Now I can put my vanishing point right in the center if I want. I could bring it over and put it on the right-hand side, or bring it over and put it on the left-hand side. It doesn't matter where you put your vanishing point on the horizon line. Now that being said, I would not put it all the way on the left or all the way on the right. I would keep it kind of in the middle, somewhere in the middle. I'm going to go ahead and put my vanishing point right here this time. So that's where I'm putting my vanishing point. You can put yours wherever you want. You do not have to put yours exactly where I put mine. So now I have my vanishing point and I have my horizon line. Those are the 2 most important things I need if I'm going to do a perspective drawing. Now, because we're doing a streetscape, remember a streetscape, or it's kind of like a landscape of a street scene, right? Because we're doing a streetscape, the first thing I want to get down on my streetscape is where my street is going to be. So I want to get the road down. And I'm going to just draw from my vanishing point. I'm just going to kind of draw an angled line out. This will be one side of my street. And I'm going to draw a line coming out the other direction as well. Maybe not quite that thick. I'm going to do mine about there. Now I didn't measure anything. I just kind of got a triangle shape. You can see that it's wider closest to me. And the 2 lines meet at the vanishing point. Every line that we're drawing that's going to go back into space is going to meet at the vanishing point. So please remember that. Every line going back into space is going to meet at the vanishing point. All right. Now, I also want to draw a sidewalk. Now in this one, I've drawn 2 sidewalks. I think on the one I'm getting ready to draw, I'm just going to draw 1 sidewalk. You can do this any way you want. I encourage you to be creative. You do not need to copy what I'm doing. Just remember that. You don't need to copy exactly what I'm doing. You should think about what you want your streetscape to look like. This one has 2 sidewalks. The one I'm getting ready to make is just going to have 1 sidewalk. So I'm just going to put 1 sidewalk over here because I have a little more room over here. So what I'm going to do, again, I know my line is going to go to my vanishing point. I don't want my sidewalk to be as wide as my road, maybe just about this wide right there. So I'm going to decide how wide I want my sidewalk to be, and I'm going to line it up and make that line. So that's going to be my sidewalk. It doesn't really look like a road or a sidewalk yet. It still just kind of looks like a few lines, but I'm going to help you bring those to life. So the next thing that we're going to do, now that we have our road defined and our sidewalk defined, is work to bring those to life a little bit. So for our road, the way that we're going to bring that to life is by adding the lines that go down the center of the road. Now, just like you see right here, this is just a vertical line. It's a vertical kind of dotted line, if you will. But I also want you to notice how way up here near the vanishing point, these lines are short and closer together. And as they get closer to me, I've made them a little longer and a little bit farther apart. So let me show you how I do that. I'm going to make sure I'm lining up with my vanishing point, of course, and I am going to make this a vertical straight up and down line. And I'm going to leave my ruler. I'm going to get my ruler right where I want it in that straight up and down position. And I'm going to bring that down the, one second, okay. I'm going to bring some lines down. I'm going to start with them kind of short and closer together. And as I come down, they're getting a little longer and a little farther apart. A little longer and a little farther apart. So they just kind of look like that. So now I have something that looks a little bit more like a road. Those lines started out short and close together, and as I got closer to myself, as I got closer to the bottom of my paper, they got longer and a little farther apart. Now I want to create something that brings my sidewalk to life just a little bit. I'm going to create a curb. So usually from the road to the sidewalk, there's a little bit of a curb. And to do that, I'm just going to scoot over just a teeny tiny bit over to the left of my sidewalk line. Just a teeny tiny bit, you can see that, and make a line connecting to the vanishing point. Now that kind of just makes it look like there's a step up to get onto my sidewalk. And the next thing I'm going to do is add the breaks in the sidewalk. So when they pour the concrete, they sort of pour these in individual sections. So I'm going to add some breaks in my sidewalk to make it look more like a sidewalk. So I'm going to do that by just same thing. Actually, I'm going to start up here so you can see this. I'm going to get really short and close together lines just between my diagonal lines, really short and close together. And as they get closer to me, they're going to get a little farther apart. These are all horizontal lines. They're not connecting to a vanishing point. They're all horizontal lines. As they get closer to me, they're going to get a little larger and a little farther apart. So they're not quite as close together as they were when I started. Remember, if it doesn't look quite right, just erase it and start over on that. It's not a big deal. So now I have a sidewalk on one side of my street. Now, I'm going to show you really quickly. We only have a few minutes left together today, and I might go over just a few minutes, and if I do and you have to log out, that's totally fine, but hang with me as long as you can. I just want to show you how to start adding the buildings to your drawing. If you do have to leave, then you can always watch the recorded part of this video. So I'm going to start by making a building right down here closest to me. I'm going to start by putting a building right here. And it's just going to be kind of a rectangular building. So I'm going to draw a vertical line and then just a horizontal line as sort of the roof of my building. And then a vertical line. So I've basically just drawn a rectangle, right? That's nothing fancy. I did make it kind of connect to my curb down here, or my sidewalk, excuse me. It's just a rectangle. Now, I want you to think about this building that we're going to draw going back into space, kind of just like our practice sheet. Remember how we took a square and we connected it to the vanishing point? That was nice and simple. This is going to be simple too. So we're going to take our rectangle. I'm going to put my pencil on the top corner, just right there. I'm going to connect that to the vanishing point. I'm going to draw light lines. Now I want these to be light because I want to be able to erase them. I'm going to put my pencil on this corner and draw a light line. And the line of the sidewalk is actually the line for the bottom of my building, so I don't even need to do anything. Now, if I just wanted this to be one really long building, then I'm already done. But I don't want it to be one really long building. I want it to be just one individual kind of shorter building. So I'm going to do just like we did with our cube, and I'm going to decide where I want it to end. If I wanted it to be a long rectangle, it could go here. If I wanted it to be sort of a tall, skinny building, I could stop here. I think I want mine to be sort of in the middle again. So I'm going to draw a vertical line, just like that, and then a horizontal line, just like that. Okay. All right. So now I can erase these extra guidelines. That's one reason why we make them nice and light, so that we can erase them. Now we have a building on the sidewalk on the side of our road, just like in my cityscape here. Now I've added a lot of extra details here, but all this is a bunch of different sized rectangles that I've added along these lines. These are just a bunch of rectangles that I started with. Now I'm going to show you how to add a roof if you want, and how to add some other details. Let's say that you want to add a door to this building. You want to be able to get in your building. So let's add a door. I'm going to start by just sort of choosing where I want my door to go and making a vertical line. This is just a vertical line of my door, just like that. And now to go across, I want to connect this to the vanishing point. Now, one trick about drawing in perspective, I don't have to draw this line all the way from here to here. I don't have to draw the line all that way. I can just draw where I want it to go. So I'm just going to draw this part, because that's really all I really need of my door. That's going to save me having to do a lot of erasing later. So I'm just drawing the top of my door. And then I'll draw another vertical line right there. And if I need to connect my lines, again, I just want to make sure that it's connected to the vanishing point. And now I have a door. All right, so now I have a building with a door. Let's say that I want to draw a roof on my building, that I want a pointed roof on my building, kind of like this one has. Let me show you how to do that. Okay, to draw a point on our building, a roof on our building, first thing I'm going to do is decide what I want my roof to look like. So I want my roof maybe to come up like this, and maybe up a little bit more. So I got to figure out what I want my roof to look like. Okay. All right, I kind of like the way that that looks. Now I'm not going to need this line that's on the inside of my roof, so I can erase that. So that's the outside of my roof, but I want my roof to look like it's going back into space. So I'm going to take the point of my triangle. Again, guys, it's just like on this sheet right here. Imagine that this was a roof. You're going to connect that point to the vanishing point. So I'm going to connect this point to the vanishing point, just like that. Then, just like I did on this guy, to get this line, I'm going to line up my ruler on the angle of the triangle. I'm just going to slide it back until I get to the point where my building stops, and put the other side of the roof on it, just like that. Now this line right here is in my way, so I can get rid of that. I can get rid of that line. I can get rid of my guideline. And look at that. Now I have a building with a pointed roof on my street. Okay? All right, so it's nice and simple, guys. Just think about this as being shapes, building onto shapes, building onto shapes. Now I want to show you something quickly. What if I want to draw a building that's bigger than this one behind it? Just like you see on my streetscape here. I've got this big building right here behind my pointed roof. So let's do that really quickly. First thing I'm going to do is draw the shape of my building. So I'm going to start just like I did with this rectangle. I'm going to draw the rectangle. I'm going to draw it tall. There we go. I'm going to draw it tall. And I'm going to draw the roof, just like that. And I'm going to draw it like this. All right, so that's just the rectangle. Now, I didn't draw through this building because I want this building to look like it's in front. So that's my rectangle shape. It's going over my horizon line, so I can erase that, just like this. And then I just do exactly what I've done before. That bottom corner is already connected to the vanishing point because of the sidewalk. So now I need to connect my top corner. Put my pencil at that top corner, connect it to my vanishing point, just like that. I can erase my horizon line that's in the way. Now, if I want to decide, do I need to do this corner? I'm going to put my pencil there, and I'm going to put my ruler on the pencil and connect it to the vanishing point. But, I don't want to draw that line because it goes through the middle of my shape. So I don't need that one. So I have my building going back into space. And now I know I want it just to be a tall, kind of narrow building. So I'm going to define the back end of my building just by drawing a vertical line, just like that. I can erase this. I accidentally erased part of my horizon line that I need, but I can always just add that back in there, just like that. So it's not difficult. You just keep adding shapes, and you can do that on both sides of your street. You can add doors. You can add windows. These windows I've added the same exact way that I did my door. All I did was decide, here, let's add a couple of windows on this one just really quickly. I decide where I want my windows to be. I'm going to add a window here, and I'm lining that up with the vanishing point. And I want it to stop right there, like that. And I want maybe 2 stories of windows on this one. So I'm connecting all these lines to my vanishing point. Do you see that, guys? Make sure you're connecting everything to your vanishing point. And then I'm just going to put vertical lines on either side, just like that. And I can just erase what's on the outside, just like this. Now let's say I don't want just buildings on my street. Let's say I want to have some trees on my street. I want this to be a beautiful landscape, not just a bunch of buildings. You could do that too. So let's say I want trees lining this side of my road. I know that I want my trees to kind of come up to where the road is. So that's going to be this line of my street will be where I start. And then I want to kind of make a line that tells me where the tops of my trees need to go, because they need to get smaller and smaller as they go back into space. So what if I did this? I made a little guideline for myself, and then I could make some trees here, like this. And then I have a tree. So these lines should be vertical. I'm not doing a very good job of making them vertical. Let me use my ruler for that. These lines should be vertical. There's my tree. I'm going to put another tree trunk. Remember that as they go back into space, they should get smaller and closer together. So I just added a bunch of tree trunks there. And I could go back and add my trees and just make sure that they don't go over the top of that guideline. Okay, that's really not a great tree drawing, but that was just a quick example of how you could add something like that into your landscape. So it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be really simple. But what I would like for you to do this week, and I know we're over our time a little bit, what I'd like for you to do this week is start your streetscape. So start your streetscape. Add your road. If you would like sidewalks, add those. Add any buildings that you would like to add. You might notice on this one, for example, I added some letters. I did the same thing with my letters that I did with my trees. I made some little guidelines that go to the vanishing point. You can see that right there. These guidelines line up with the vanishing point, and then my letters got smaller and closer together as they went back into space. All of these things that you see, this is kind of like an air conditioner on the top of a building or a sign on the top of a building. All of these are just squares and rectangles that I stuck on top, and I just took them back to the vanishing point. So all I did on this one was draw a cube on top of a cube. So you could do that with your practice sheet. You could practice drawing a cube on top of this one. All you would need to do is start by getting your cube and then lining those lines up with the vanishing point, just like that, right? That one didn't line up very well. But you see what I mean? You're just stacking cubes, and then all you have to do is erase what's inside the cube to make it look like it's sitting on top. So it's not hard. It just takes some practice. I encourage you to practice over the next couple of days and the next couple of weeks. We'll be meeting again together on the 20th. That's 2 weeks from now. So I'll see you again on October 20th. And when I see you again, I would love to see what you have so far. I would love to see that you have a horizon line with a vanishing point. I'd love to see that you have a street and some buildings. Maybe you have some trees, or maybe you have buildings on both sides. I'd love to see you try to add doors and windows. All of the instructions that I've given you today will be recorded, so you will get to see a recording of all of these things that I've done today. And you can watch it as many times as you need to get instructions. So if you have questions between now and then, I'm happy to answer them by email. In just a second, I'm going to stop recording so that if you have questions, you can unmute your mic and you can ask those. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to stop the recording so that if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take those. So give me just 1 second.